Brothers and sisters in Christ, the days are getting longer, and even though it's still a bit cool, it's getting brighter. And so these are signs to us in creation of our hope that we celebrate today. But there's greater signs than these, and this is what we celebrate in the liturgy. You know, I've been sharing lately, it's interesting how, during this season of Lent, as I hear many confessions along with my brother priests, people think a lot about life and death. In fact, as many of you know, we've celebrated many funerals lately. Just last week, we celebrated the funeral for Harvey Chatelain, who is the father of a son of Saskatoon, Archbishop Murray, a priest of Saskatoon, who's now the Archbishop of Keewatin-Lapa. My own father is coming towards the end as well in his journey, and there is a lot of people dealing with dying and death. But it's not just the elders amongst us. I've been hearing in a lot of confessions, younger people reflecting a lot about death, and many of them have faced it through different circumstances of their lives, and rejoice, sometimes with trepidation, at the way in which God's mercy calls them back, sometimes from the edge. As I reflect on today's gospel and last week's gospel, last week, as you may recall, was about the woman who was looking for a drink from the well. And Jesus said to her, "This water will leave you thirsty. I will give you the water that will never leave you thirsty, living water." Well, today we hear about sight and vision. I mean, I don't know about you, but often I find I take my sight for granted until my eyes hurt or they weep water, or I can't see very well because of obstacles. Sight is very important. Water is very important. So I pose to you a question. At the end of life, we often wonder, well, what kind of dying and death will I have? And I think that's common for young and older people. But maybe there's another question given the readings of the last few weeks. When I die, will I be thirsty or not? When I die, will I be able to see or not? Now, of course, ultimate sight and ultimate satisfaction will be in heaven with the Lord. But I am increasingly convinced that we are called to share in Jesus, who is our living water now. We are called to share in the one who gives us sight now. And of course, at the end of life and in heaven, we will profoundly see and know his satisfaction. I use a metaphor that I've shared a lot with you when I go on my wilderness adventures or hiking or am stretched on some sort of race. It's very important to be hydrated and to be well nourished. If you're not, you will not run the race very well. And so athletes seek true, good water and hydration and food. If they don't, they will not only perform poorly, but it may affect their very health. All the more in the spiritual life. You and I are called to meet and receive Jesus. He is our food and our drink. And if we don't receive him, it can be pretty difficult journeying through life. This is why we rejoice today, because Jesus is with us. O come, Emmanuel. You have come at Christmas and you dwell amongst us. And for those who seek you and for those for whom you call, the Spirit comes to bring blessing, to bring drink, and to bring sight. Just a moment to talk about the gospel. A man who was born blind in the time of Jesus was up against a lot of difficulties, not just his lack of sight. He was up against the difficulty of being judged as someone who was cursed, someone who was not blessed by God. To be blind from birth is a tremendous, tremendous obstacle. And so it is this man who is blind from birth that seeks healing from Jesus. But interesting thing happens. He is not only healed, but those who observe this can't, and some won't, believe it. Why would that be? Why would a miraculous healing, which is evident by the fact that everyone's known this man has been born blind, all of a sudden he can see, why would that not be accepted? You know, there's much option that comes to growth and healing in our world. And sometimes, I hate to say, it's easier to hold on to the darkness we know than the new sight that leads us to new vision. I do think this is part of what Jesus faced in the gospel. It's also part of the reason why many who are healed are told to go forward and not make a big deal of it to the public, but are to go forward and live their life in faith and following the commandments and living in the light, and let their life of light be seen by all. So as we look at this situation of healing, maybe we can ask ourselves on this Rejoice Sunday, how am I doing at receiving the vision, the sight of the Lord that He wants to give me now? How am I doing at uniting myself with Him so that I am receiving Him who is living water? Is there anything in my life that stops me up from trusting or receiving the sight that Jesus wants to give me? And if so, what is it? Is it a lack of trust? Is it a cynicism? Is it a lack of hope? What obstacle might be in my life that prevents me from receiving the fullness of Christ, at least this side of heaven? Brothers and sisters, there's enough challenges in the world, and we can fix on those constantly if we wish. Just go to any news channel. But on this day, we celebrate Jesus has come, and He comes so that we may have life and have it abundantly. Do you and I believe this? And if we do believe it, and yes, we know we need God's help in our unbelief, can we ask and receive His sight today and trust that that helps us on the journey so that we are well hydrated and well nourished to walk the race of life today? I conclude with a statement made by a priest, Father Jeffrey Kirby, in one of our Catholic periodicals, where he spoke about the way back from a crisis of faith. While doctrine is approached with suspicion, it appears that there is no real radical crisis of faith. The real problem is that many people no longer have faith in God, in Jesus Christ, and the gospel that has inspired and sustained so many cultures. Pope Francis rightly observed, God's tenderness leads us to understand that love is the meaning of life. God is love. And without faith and trust in God, we are hard-pressed to experience tenderness, selflessly give it, and to seek to assert it as an expectation. In God and only in Him, says Pope Francis, is there love without reservation and second thoughts, absolute and unmitigated giving, and the tenacity of full acceptance that Jesus Christ has suffered, died, and is risen for us all. A great inspiring statement, I thought, today as we celebrate Laetare Sunday. Rejoice and hope, because God is coming, He has risen, and His life calls out to all of us today. God bless you as we continue our Lenten journey to Holy Week and Easter.